Former City chairman David Bernstein stated his belief that Roy Keane should have no place in football after his infamous tackle in Alf-Inge Haaland 2 decades ago. He says, I think, frankly, it's dreadful. He's accepted in football the way that he is, says Bernstein. After doing something like that, I think it's absolutely appalling. Whenever Keane turns up on television, I switch off. I just won't watch it. I'm appalled that he's still involved in football. It's just not right. Yeah, and he goes on to quote, obviously, the very famous "take that, you so-and-so" line. He said, it was done in cold blood. It was a cold-blooded incident. I've never forgiven Keane for that. From a personal point of view, that was the worst individual thing that I've been directly involved in, and the worst thing I've ever seen on a football pitch. As a human being, it was an awful thing to see. It's a bit of a bolt from the blue, I suppose, would be the first thought about this, that you kind of thought that everybody had made their peace about that, including potentially the two protagonists involved. There's still obviously a huge question mark over what part that challenge play, as horrific as it was, and there's no point in saying anything else. It was one of the, if not the most horrific challenges you're ever likely to see. It remains in doubt as to what part it played in the ultimate retirement of Alf-Inge Haaland from an injury on the opposite leg. But I mean, that's not to say it didn't play a part. But a bolt from the blue here on David Bernstein is, I was not something I was expecting to read today, I have to say.
No, 20 years on though, and it is a hook ahead of the Manchester derby this weekend. And also, the big hook around it is Erling Haaland becoming, and is about to become, one of the best footballers in the world. That when you think about it, and you think when you're explaining the story of Erling Haaland to anybody, it's hard to not talk about the fact that his father is somebody who played for Leeds United and Manchester City, and is the person at the receiving end of probably the most famous challenge in Premier League history. So it's probably going to get spoken about quite a bit over the next little while, especially if Haaland ever does come to the league. Like, imagine if Haaland does sign for Manchester City or Manchester United, like, assuming this has no part to play in it, ahead of the first Manchester derby, like, the press officer is going to be, can we just stick to questions about this weekend, please? Can we just stick to questions about this weekend? I don't think this is going to be the last time we see this story brought up over the next couple of years, to put it that way. And there is going to be an opportunity. There is going to be some point where he does come up against Manchester United in the Champions League at the very least. So
is it ludicrous on the idea that we should all be disgusted, and Roy Keane, like, look at it's been a week where in this country there was obviously a huge reaction to an incident early in the week, and I think as the week has gone on, people have begun to see the side of nuance and forgiveness and second chances and that kind of thing. It feels slightly ludicrous that Roy Keane should be out of football to me. Like, I mean, I think that he made this challenge. He isn't all that contrite about it, obviously. I mean, I don't know what his latest take is, but certainly when he wrote his book not that long ago, the last number of years, he wasn't in the slightest bit contrite about it and wanted to get his revenge up nice and cold. And it was a horrific challenge, but so it's not even about forgiveness or second chances, because that's not necessarily something Roy Keane is looking for. But it does seem as if it's been addressed. He's not willing to be contrite about it, and it would be an incredible thing to banish Roy Keane from the world of football for.
Yeah, it would be. Like, Daniel Taylor's written this piece, and he's spoken to Eamon Dunphy, and just a passage from the article here. Dunphy has always been willing to accept that he used his own artistic license on the relevant book passage. Keane did read it back, ticked it off, and approved it to be published in that way. But it is important to remember that it was Dunphy's use of language that made it sound like a scene from a Martin Scorsese film, which is a great way of describing it. Dunphy says it was a ghosted autobiography, so I put in the quotes and attributed them to Roy, and that cost him dearly. I was sorry I got Roy into trouble and that he faced a charge from the FA and got punished quite severely. And he did get punished quite severely. It could have been more severe, is the only thing. Like, you're always going to have someone like Bernstein.
Hang on a second. Is he saying that one of the most famous quotes in football of all time was now not actually a quote at all? Like, is he saying that he entirely invented? I don't even. Is the language is a bit.
That's what he said. He wrote the book. Keane signed off on it. That's the way it goes. I'm sure Keane holds the vast majority, if not all of it, all the opinions dear to his heart, and believes everything that's in that book. There's no question about that. I guess the flowery language maybe, and the brilliant use of words maybe isn't something that would have come as easily to Roy Keane as it would have to Eamon Dunphy. But when Roy Keane sees it written down, I'm sure he's like, that's what I think. Actually, you've articulated it quite well. I'm sure that's how the process would have gone.
Yeah.
Like
he wasn't saying no. That goes entirely against how I feel. And this is, I was so contrite about the whole thing. I mean, the images were clearly not that, but I mean, I just find it, yeah, look, it is what it is.
Yeah, like I mean, it's interesting what happens like over the years afterwards, but just on the punishment and like, I guess the lawsuit that could have been brought against Roy Keane at that time. Like it is interesting to think about what might have happened if maybe Haaland wasn't wearing a bandage on one of his knees, if he didn't line out for Norway 4 days later. Would there have actually been proper grounds to sue Roy Keane at that point? Bernstein says absolutely we had grounds to sue. We felt very strongly about it. But I guess when the player in question does line out for his country 4 days later, even though he did come off injured in a couple of games, it probably does affect your case a little bit. Like it's there's a few different like sliding doors moments in this entire story where you wonder how things might have gone differently for sure. But it's going to be interesting to see if this does play into where your man's unbelievably talented son ends up. Like, does that play a part of your Alf-Inge? Like he doesn't like to talk about it anymore. So I don't think he's ever been willing to think about it, to talk about it.
I think if Roy Keane was still involved at United, is that what you're saying? Would this play into his decision as to if he was thinking about going to United? Would he suddenly say, "No, I'm not going because of that"?
Like I'm just asking the question. Could it possibly could it possibly play into it? Like I presume it would have a very small part to play, if anything. Like I mean, it is his dad. I'm sure like his dad is still affected to it to this day, considering he doesn't talk about it. So like I don't know. I think probably if there is going to be a decision made about Manchester United in the future of Erling Haaland's career, it'll probably have more to do with Mino Raiola than it will have to do with Alf-Inge. To be quite honest with you, but it's just curious that like this is the other context with it. It's not just 20 years on, and it's not just for the Manchester derby. This is a story that's probably going to get